Hello, everyone. Today we have a Gulzar for our mock interview. Gulzar, thank you for joining our mock interview. Can you briefly tell about yourself?
Hi, thank you for having me here today. I'm Gulzar Kassimova. I'm experienced at full stack SDET. I do both manual and automation testing. Coming to the testing tools, my main programming language is Java, but I'm also familiar with Python and some forecasting features of R. For UI testing, I use Selenium WebDriver and Playwright. For backend testing, I use Postman as a manual tool for testing of API calls and rest assured libraries for automation of this process. And I also have an experience working with relational databases. I use JDBC to connect to the database, and I use SQL queries to fetch the data from database in validation purpose. Coming to the personal skills, I'm a self-motivated person who is eager to learn. Yeah, I think that's pretty it about my experience. Please ask any questions you have.
The next question is, you mentioned the REST API. Can you tell me the different HTTP methods in the REST API?
So they are 4 methods. It's get, put, fetch, post, delete, update. Actually, they are 5 methods.
Right. Okay. What's the difference between put and patch?
So put, it updates the method. It updates the whole data. Patch, it updates the partial.
So there is a 401 and 403 status codes. What's the difference between them?
So 401 is unauthorized. We have the status code when we have, for example, invalid token. And 403, it's forbidden. It tells us what are we allowed to do with our, for example, authorization.
Let's say we have an API, okay? We have an endpoint, and this API is creating a student, okay? We have an endpoint that /student, and it has a body, student name, student ID, and student location. Student name is a mandatory field. Student ID is mandatory field, and student location is the optional fields. Okay? So can you tell me the different testing scenarios you will apply to test this endpoint?
So first of all, I will go with positive test cases. I will provide all the valid information, all the valid data, and test 201 success. 201 created status code. Then I will start testing it with negative scenarios. First of all, I will provide the body without the student name to get 400 bad request status code. Then I will provide without, what was the second one? ID?
ID.
Without ID to have the same status code. I will start testing the authentication, authorization status codes as well by providing, for example, invalid token, by providing another authorization. What else? I can start testing what negative scenarios we can apply here. Yeah, I think those are the test cases I can come up for now.
Another thing, I will go with the 500 server error, right? For example, you'll try to hit the call and there is a server issue, so you will also simulate that environment as well. So have you done this before? Did you had some 500 server issue testing scenarios? If yes, how did you do that?
So, of course, I tested the server code status as well. What I do reach out to DevOps and ask them to shut down the server and start sending the API calls to get the 500 status code.
All right. And another thing, you will test that API with the boundary testing. Let's say the name will have at least 3 characters. So you will try to send that with the 1 character or 2 character and see that you have a bad request error code with the error code. Okay, coming to the SQL, what is the difference between group by and order by?
So group by is applied for for aggregate methods, and order by is applied for single row methods.
So group by is used when we are grouping the data with the aggregate functions, right? And the order by when we don't need any single row function or aggregate function. It's really it can work with any functions, but it is when we're sorting the data, right, with the ascending or descending order. That's what is the order by. Can you tell me what's the difference between right join and inner join?
So what is the difference between right join and inner join? When we use right join, we join all the data from the right table with the left table. If there is, for example, some missing data in left table and there is a data in right table, we will get null as a data from left table. For inner join, we join only all the data which has the matching keys. I mean, if there is a data, the matching data from two tables, we will get them joined.
How would you get the unique data from the database?
Unique data we can get using distinct keyword.
Distinct keyword, good. So for the Cucumber questions, what is the data table?
So what is the data table? Data table we apply when we want to perform data-driven testing. When we have, for example, a data table, we do use, how to explain it? So there are two cases. One of them is an example when we apply scenario outline, when we can run our test cases with multiple data, and the data table where we can provide the data as a table.
Okay, and what's the difference between them, between examples table and data table?
So examples table, it runs the test case multiple times using the multiple data set. The data table, it runs only once, and we can interpret it as a map or a list of maps.
What's a background keyword in Cucumber?
So we apply background keyword when we have the steps which are reusable for all the scenarios in this feature file. For example, if we need to sign in, we can provide all the steps in background, so we don't need to reuse the same steps in every scenarios we have in this feature file.
How do you rerun your failed test cases?
I have rerunner class, which captures the test cases which are failed, and it reruns it by providing the plugin in Cucumber option.
Okay, so where it takes these failed test cases?
Yeah, I think I will not be able to answer this.
Okay, so when we running it, it will generate a text file that will pass all the failed test case scenarios, and when we rerun it, we pass that file to pick up failed test case, and that's how it will rerun it. Okay. How do you run your regression? Where do you run your regression?
So for running the regression, we use Jenkins job. I have scheduled Jenkins job which runs regression tests before each deployed.
And how often you deploy?
Every 2 weeks.
Let's say you have some failures on your regression. So how would you handle that?
So first of all, I will go for those test cases and I will look at the code. Maybe this test case is flaky. Then if it is flaky, I will try to fix them. I will test it manually first if it is failing or not. And I will, recreate the steps to run that test case. Then if it is a bug, I will reach out to devs to tell them, and I will report that failure. If it is not, so I will work on my test case.
How do you group your test cases in the Cucumber?
By providing tags.
Tags. How would you do that? The same thing in the TestNG?
So in TestNG, we have group by, we can provide group by in the test keyword, I believe.
So we provide...
Under the test keyword.
We provide groups parameter for the test annotation in the every test, right? And where do we mention what groups we want to run?
So we provide it in our TestNG XML file. We can mention the test cases we need to run, and we want to include and exclude.
Okay. So in TestNG, how do you perform data-driven testing?
So we perform data-driven testing by using data provider annotation, where we provide all the data we need as a multidimensional object. I mean, the data provider returns us multidimensional object, which provides a different data set.
In TestNG, if you have one method that's dependent on another method, how would you handle it?
So as I remember, there is an option to provide in our test annotation the depends, and we can mention the test case which it is depends on. And the second thing, there is an option to provide, I can't recall it for now, but we can provide the numbers, which, for example, what was the keyword? Could you please remind me?
Numbers, you mean? It depends on method?
Yeah, depends on, and there is a second thing which runs the test cases.
They provide priority?
Yeah, priority.
Okay, no, the priority will go for the prioritizing the methods. For example, you run 20 test cases at once, then you will mention which one will go first by priority, saying 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But depends on will not work by priority. If you run that single method, it will run that single method if it has only the priority. You need to have a depends on, so it will run that method that it depends on. Okay. So if we don't pass the priority for the test annotation, but we pass for all other tests, what is going to be the value for that priority, for that test priority?
The value will be 0 and it will run first, and then all the other test cases which has priority with numbers, they will run second.
What is the page object model?
So page object model design pattern is the concept we apply for our frameworks. It is the creating the page classes for each page of the application. We apply it in order to reuse all those web elements in our test cases.
Okay. What do you have in these classes?
So what I have in these classes, I have a constructor, and I have the web elements located using the find by annotation.
What else?
I have one instance of WebDriver.
Okay.
And reusable methods.
Reusable methods. Good. What is a singleton design pattern, and where do you use that in your framework?
So I use singleton design pattern in my framework for browsers. For example, the reusable methods for setting up the driver, it will check whether the driver is open or not. And if it is open, it will return the same browser. If it is not, it will set up, for example, the Chrome browser, Edge browser, depending on the option I provide.
Okay, very good. So on Selenium, how do you handle multiple windows?
So I do handle multiple windows by using Windows handles.
And how you manage it? How do you do that?
For example, if we use window handle, it will return the ID of the current tab. But if we use window handles, it will provide us the IDs for other tabs. So it will return if we store the information in set, and we can loop through this set and compare whether the ID of current tab is matching to the ID of the tab which is in set.
Mm-hmm. And if it doesn't match,
Also, we can switch.
how do you handle drop-downs?
So drop-downs we could handle by using select class. We can select by value, select by visible text, or select by index.
So coming to the Java, can you tell me what's the difference between string and string builder?
So the main difference is that string is immutable, string builder is mutable. Meaning that, for example, I have a string saying hello, and I want to add one more word like hello world. So if I want to add it, it will create another string, and the first string will be handled by garbage collector. But in string builder, we can add the second word directly to this string builder we created.
Okay, so it will modify the
Yes.
existing object. Can you tell me what is the constant variable in Java?
The final variable we have in classes, which are initialized and cannot be reinitialized in other classes.
What is the static block?
So static block we use to initialize the static variables we have in class. So it runs once when we initialize the static variable we have.
Good. What is the final class?
So final class is the class which cannot be inherited.
What methods we cannot overwrite?
Static methods and final methods.
Okay. What's the difference between default and protected access modifiers?
So default can be accessed in the same class and in the same package. Protected, it can be accessed in the same class, same package, and the subclass from different package.
Very good. So when we say same package, means same package classes.
Yes.
Okay. Great. What's the difference between instance variable and static variable in Java?
So instance variables, they are non-static variables. When we create an instance of this class, they have the values for each instance of that variable. For static variables, they do share the same information for all the instances of that class.
What's the difference between abstract class and interface in Java?
So interface is a full abstraction. It can hold only abstract methods. Abstract class can hold abstract methods and non-abstract methods as well.
Okay. What else?
So all the variables in instance class are constant, meaning that they are final.
You mean interface, right?
Yes,
In
interface. And in abstract class, the fields are not final. I mean, they are not constant.
Can they be final?
Yes.
Okay. So the abstract class can have regular variables or constant variables, any type of variables we can have in abstract class. So what else? One more thing I want to hear about the interface.
So the methods in interface, they need to be overridden. They must be overridden.
Okay, let me ask you this. Can we achieve multiple inheritance in Java?
Yes.
Yeah.
So multiple inheritance can be achieved only with interface. So we can extend multiple interfaces. But for abstract class, we can inherit only one class.
Very good. How would you do the regular method in interface if you want to create a regular method?
So I think it's not possible to create regular method in interface because it can hold only abstract methods.
Okay, we can create a regular methods. We use a default keyword to create a regular method. And if you want to create a regular static method, then we use a static keyword to create the regular static.
Okay, I'll keep it in mind.
Okay, very good. So when a interface inherits another interface, what keyword it uses to inherit that?
Extends.
Yes. So when class inherits the interface, we use implements. When the interface inherits interface, we use extends. Can an interface inherit a class?
So by logic, I think yes.
No. Interface doesn't inherit a class. Interface can inherit only the interface. Let's say we have a class and it doesn't inherit any class. So we don't say extends ABC class. What it will inherit then by default?
Object class.
So for the constructors, why we have a constructor in Java? What's the purpose of it?
So the purpose of constructor is the initialize variables while we're creating them.
Okay. What's the difference between these and super keywords in Java?
So this, it refers to the fields of this class. Super, it refers to the fields of parent class.
What about this with parentheses and super with the parentheses?
So this with parentheses, it will refer to the constructor of the same class. For example, we have a constructor for two fields of the same class. We can use this with parentheses to refer to that constructor. For super, I'm not sure, but I think it follows the same logic.
Super, it is calling super classes constructor, right? So this will call this classes constructor. Next question, what is the difference between method overloading and method overriding?
So they are called static and dynamic polymorphism. Method overriding is a dynamic polymorphism, which, for example, we can have the same method but different implementation. For method overloading, we can have the same method but different parameters. For overriding, we need to have the same method signature and same return type, same access. It needs to have the same access, or it needs to be more accessible. I think that's it.
Okay, very good. What's the difference between static polymorphism and dynamic polymorphism?
So for static polymorphism, the method looks to the same method and it runs the same method. But for dynamic, it looks to the one method and it runs the another method. For method overriding, for dynamic polymorphism, I can give an example of method overriding. For example, we overrode one method, and it will loop the first method at the beginning, but it will run the overridden method at the end.
It will point to the different method at compile time, but at the runtime, it will run the different overridden method for a dynamic polymorphism. And we apply that through the method overriding. And at the compile time, it will point to the one method, and at runtime, it will run the same method that it is pointing. That's what we call the static polymorphism, and we can achieve it through the method overloading. Coming to soft skills, can you tell me what's the difference between white box testing and the black box testing?
So the main difference in white box testing, we do need to know the implementation. In black box testing, we do care only about the input and output.
What's the difference between product backlog and the sprint backlog?
So product backlog is all the user stories we have for this product. For sprint backlog, we do pick some user stories from product backlog, which we need to implement in this sprint.
How long is your sprint?
2 weeks.
When does it start and when it ends?
So it starts on Wednesday and ends on Tuesday.
Okay, what kind of different meeting ceremonies you have?
So at the beginning of sprint, I have sprint planning meeting. where we do decide what user stories to pick up from product backlog. Every day I have daily stand-up meetings, and then we have demo meeting and sprint grooming.
Coming to the Git, have you worked with the Git?
Yes.
What Git version control tool you used?
So we use GitHub.
GitHub, great. Can you tell me how do you do the pull request and who reviews your pull request?
So pull request, I do first clone the project. So I will go through all the process, clone the project, then I do bump the version. Then I start working on my code. Then I do... Yeah, I'm really sorry, I can't answer.
Okay, so let me answer that. So we have first add, right? Then we commit our changes to our branch. Then we pull the latest changes from the develop branch, and then we push it to our branch in the remote repository. And in the remote repository, we create a pull request saying, can you merge my branch to the develop branch? At that time, we assign the reviewers, and the reviewers will review our code.
Can I ask you a question? So the latest version, what we pull, it doesn't have the changes we made in our branch.
Mm-hmm.
So how to compare them and how to update, for example, the project I was working with the latest version I pulled.
So you will pull the latest version from develop branch, and it will be merged to your code. If you have a code, a class, and someone else did some changes on the same class, and when you pull the code, it will show you the conflict. Mm-hmm. At that time, you gotta resolve the conflict. If you have that conflict, if you both made the same changes on the same class, but if you don't have any conflicts, which means you didn't make the same changes on the same class, then it means you're all good, and the latest changes will be merged to the different files of your repository.
And one more question: how do you handle the code conflicts you have at your work?
At that time, you need to go through the code, try to fix your code, or you gotta get in a meeting with your peer who made the same changes, and you gotta resolve that together. Let's do one more question. Why we should hire you?
So I will bring to your company the great technical skills along with the personal skills I have. That's why you need to hire me.
You can say you have a lot of different candidates. I'm not telling that I'm the best, but I know about myself that I can bring my best to the company, and I think I've matched with my skills to this position. That's why I think that I'm the good candidate for it.
Okay.
Okay. Great. Thank you very much for the interview. That was great. I gave you the instant feedbacks.
Thank you, Arslan. Thank you for having me here today.